What you have to understand about Los Angeles is the homeless crisis, it's very severe. We have an average of 5 to 6 homeless people dying per day. People are really losing faith in the system itself. Residents, they've sort of reached a boiling point.
We're just trying to figure out ways to clean up the city and make things better and safer.
We all network off of each other and we learn from each other and we motivate each other, and you feel like you're not alone. You're not the only one doing this, doing the job that the city's supposed to be doing.
These people are also becoming citizen journalists. They're doing like Public Records Act requests. They're digging into the records. They're doing a better job than a lot of media.
My guest today is Beige Luciano-Adams, the Epoch Times reporter in Los Angeles. Today she's here to tell us what LA residents are doing for their own city and how ordinary residents are actually organizing to clean up trash and deal with the encampments in the city. We also sit down with Keith Johnson, who has been organizing a group called Save LA, as well as April Silverman and Cameron Flanagan, who have been instrumental in cleaning up homeless encampments in their communities. The intention of our guests is to clean up their city, as well as help the homeless find housing. We were very inspired by hearing the stories of these individuals and what they're doing for their own city.
I reached out to a contractor to clean up an area where there was cardboard boxes and some debris. We just do it on our own.
Who pays for all this?
We do. We pay for it.
I'm Siyamak. Welcome to California Insider. Beige, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you, Siyamak. Nice to be here.
You know, you're a reporter with us, Epoch Times, and you're helping us cover LA. And recently, there is a group of residents that are getting frustrated with what's happening in their streets. And they're actually taking the matter in their hands. You've been covering them. Can you tell us who these people are?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I would want to just start to give you kind of a state of how things are going in Los Angeles with regard to homeless programs, and it's not good. There are several audits that are happening. There is a lawsuit. There was recently a statewide audit showing that in the 5 years in which we've spent $24 billion on homeless programs in California, we don't actually know how the money has been spent. If it's effective, they haven't been able to track performance. They just stopped collecting and analyzing data in 2021. So we're at this point where things are very chaotic and it looks like it's all about to crumble because everyone is sort of pointing the finger at everybody else. So the county, the city council, the mayor, the comptroller is, city comptroller is doing his own audit. All of these things happening at once, and people are really losing faith in the system itself. And it's become sort of clear that neither the state, the county, or the city can provide reliable evidence that these programs are working.
So do people know that where their money is gone, which programs, or they don't really track?
No, at the state level, they just haven't tracked it, and they have a lot of problems with data quality, the way they analyze it, the way they collect it. And at the same time, the state is saying, well, it's really the responsibility of the local municipalities to collect this data so we can analyze it. It appears to us, those of us who live in Los Angeles, that things are just getting worse. We have an average of 5 to 6 homeless people dying per day. Mayor Bass's Inside Safe program in its first year, it did make a dent because it moved a lot of high-profile encampments off the streets, and it moved these people into hotels and connected them with services. But out of nearly 2,000 people who were moved inside, only about 250 or so actually went on to permanent housing, and the other people that exited the program, we don't really know where they exited to. We don't have reliable data for that.
And there was a lot of money that's been spent on homelessness. Is there more money to be spent? Do you know about that?
Well, the city is facing a deficit this year from overspending and other issues. So no, there's not a lot of money. The Inside Safe program has been allocated something like $250 million. 67 million of which was spent on the first year. So again, that's 67 million that got around 2,000 people inside, but only 250 or so actually went on to permanent housing. It's an interesting point in time, and residents who have been frustrated with progress, with transparency, and with response from their elected leaders and their representatives, they've sort of reached a boiling point. Like you said, some of them are taking matters into their own hands, and they're trying to respond to the crisis in their own way.
So you came in touch with some of these residents. We have interviewed some of them.
Yeah.
Can you explain who they are and what they're doing?
They're normal people. What we should understand about Los Angeles is that everybody complains about homelessness, right? Like you hear it all the time. People complain online, on Twitter, on Nextdoor, if you're on Nextdoor. Everyone has something to say, but very few people have taken it upon themselves to try to push things along and find solutions where the city or the county falls short. Actually, I found some of them on Nextdoor because they post about this issue a lot in their own neighborhoods. For example, Keith Johnson, he's a retired high school photography teacher, and he lives in Hollywood. And one day he was talking to a neighbor who was picking up trash down the street, and he volunteered to help do like a trash pickup. Just from his posts on Nextdoor, which are just photos kind of saying, look how bad this is. You know, this is wrong. We need a better solution. This encampment is literally in front of a preschool or an elementary school. Kids are walking by an encampment every day on the way to school. And from his posts, he actually got offered a radio program, local radio. He's interviewing a lot of policymakers and elected leaders and getting them to talk about their positions on these issues. So in that way, he's having an impact on his community.
Just this morning, I reached out to a contractor to clean up an area where there was cardboard boxes and some debris. And, you know, we don't want these places that get like cardboard boxes and mattresses and couches that can become another encampment, another problem in our neighborhood. And so we have the 311, the city services we can use. We can also reach out to the council district to see if they'll help us out. But if it's going to be a day or a week before they come and clean it up, it can turn into encampment in a day or less. And so we just do it on our own, clear up different areas, and we're just, you know, just to discourage it from setting up as another encampment.
Who pays for all this?
We do. We pay for it. This morning, the fellow said 150, and I said, yeah, you know, I gave him some other business to clean up another area from another different person in the group, and oh yeah, okay, I'll make it 100. So we can kind of negotiate over cleanups, and he cleaned it up this morning, so it was right away. So rather than use our 311 system with the city and then wait for that cycle, they come weekly to do it. You know, if they pick up on Friday and you see the pile of stuff on a Monday, so it can become an encampment, and we'd rather not that wouldn't happen. So,
and what happens if these encampments come?
They seem to just do this cycle of care plus cleanups. So here's what happens. They let the people in the encampment know, hey, we're going to come next Wednesday morning at 6 a.m., so you'll need to move all the stuff you want to keep to another part of the street. And then the city comes in, all the tents and structures and debris, all the junk, they come in with skip loaders and dump trucks, and it could be a crew of 20 or 30 city workers, LAPD to provide security and safety for the workers, and they'll come in, clean it all up, throw away everything, including like personal documents that these people don't take, and then they end up losing. And then as soon as the city crews are gone, they can come back. The mayor came and did an inside safe, yay! Before the ink was dry on her press release, they moved back the same day.
All of a sudden, we had an encampment, like a tent, and it ended up in our residential part of the neighborhood. That's never happened before. Once I saw it started creeping in slowly into residential, I knew I had to do something. So I started going through all the motions and reaching out to the city council. I thought for sure, like, residential we have some limits of where they can camp. No. If they decide they want to camp on your lawn or near you, it's not a problem. Whatever they say goes, because they don't criminalize poverty. So once I started pushing and reaching out to them, I said, I think he's a drug dealer. I was convinced he's a drug dealer because late at night and during the day, he always had all these visitors come with their trucks and talk to him through the window like a drive-through. And the city was like, no, that we checked, there's no drugs going on. And he just fell on hard times, and this neighborhood's safe, so he doesn't want to be around the bad neighborhoods, so he wants to be there, but he's going to accept housing, don't worry, we're working on it. So I gave them a month, and I said, okay, what's the story? They weren't responding. I kept checking in, and they're like, well, he didn't like the housing we offered him, so we're trying to figure something else out. I'm like, oh, really? He doesn't like the housing. But it was that week was the monsoon of rain. We had a whole rainstorm, and it was freezing all week. So if he didn't accept any housing and he was willing to stay in the rain, I'm like, he must be on drugs and selling them. So I kept pushing them, and they're like, well, there's nothing we can do, but we can schedule a care cleanup, which is hotel room service and housekeeper service for these homeless. Doesn't solve the problem. They're like, we can't kick him out, but we can clean up the area. So it was 3 months of this just to get this care cleanup scheduled. So they give him 72-hour notice that from 6 in the morning to 4 or 5 p.m., he has to take all his stuff off the sidewalk, or it's going to go into city storage, and he kind of has to go back and pick it up. So he was complying, he was clearing all his stuff, but I saw he had all these cones that he stole from the city. He had 4 cars too. So this wasn't a regular homeless guy. He used the cones to block off parking spots. So when he would do his drug runs, he'd come back and he'd still have the parking spot, because if you see a city cone, you're not gonna park there. You assume it's from the city. So that's how that was his game all those few months. So I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I showed up there, and in the dark of night, I started grabbing the cones away when he didn't realize, and I took them away, and so basically his big thing was gone, his big superpower, and the care cleanup technically went into effect at 6 o'clock, so all his stuff was cleared. So I hired builders, and we started blocking the street and taking over, and we built a wall within those few hours. So there's no room anymore to encamp. So by the time the cleanup happened, there was nowhere for him to go. He had to leave. He was planning on staying and having it cleaned for him and go back there. He doesn't want to leave. This is the best spot for him. Once we built the wall, within those hours, there was nowhere for him to encamp anymore. He had to leave. He saw we weren't okay with it, and we, kind of strong-armed him in a way and made him feel uncomfortable. And he had a dog too, a guard dog for, make sure nobody steals from him. So I kept saying the dog is very hostile and aggressive, and it attacked many people, tried to attack them. And they're like, no, it's the friendliest dog. He's the friendliest guy. They basically, what happens is they take the side of the criminals and of the homeless, and they never take care of the property, the law-abiding citizens. We don't have any rights. So every time I kept telling them, I have so many stories of friends and their kids, they're petrified of this man. No. They just gaslight you and tell you you're not seeing what you're seeing, basically. The neighborhood and the community were so grateful for me getting rid of him, they couldn't believe it. So everybody started pitching in to a fund, because it costs money to keep doing this. I started doing this all over the neighborhood. Once I got rid of the homeless, I would have planters, and we would build them onto the sidewalk, so there's no room anymore to encamp. Because they look for any open sidewalk where there's nothing going on there. That's their best spot, basically, their prime real estate to encamp there. So all over my whole neighborhood, on the commercial sides, in front of Enterprise Rent-A-Car, in front of supermarkets, I've been building, organizing and building planters once I see a vulnerable location. Either there's a homeless there that I worked super hard, it takes months to get rid of them through the city, and I go that day. The second they leave for the cleanup, I get it built that day. If not, I scout spots that are potential issues and go build there. I've spoken to many officers, and about 70 to 80% of the people that are homeless are there by choice because they're either doing drugs, selling drugs, or mentally ill. So it's only about 5 to 10% of the people that are there because they've had some bad luck and they're just trying to land back on their feet. So only 5 to 10% are going to accept this housing. Most of the people out there are not accepting the housing. They love being out on the street. No one's telling them what to do. They don't have anyone to abide by.
The majority of the reason is that they don't want the rules. So when you go into a shelter, there are rules, like anything in life. You have to, check in. They're pretty loose rules, actually. I mean, you check in every 3 days at 10 o'clock. And then if you don't show up in 3 days, one of your buddies can check in for you. Or, after 3 days, you check in and you go back out. You can go in the neighborhood, you can go anywhere you want to, you can go explore the homes and see what's available for you to recycle. And that provides them a little bit of pocket money, 30 to 50 bucks. And then the rest of the time, they may go out and panhandle. They may go out and go to CVS or Vaughn's nearby and decide to shop with or without their EBT benefits. Occasionally I'll have one rebellious client from the Bridge Home Shelter decide they want a dual residence and try to plop up a tent because they want to go do their drugs and have sex with some woman from the shelter in the tent. The thing I found really interesting in all of this is how the gangs run the homeless. So they know the homeless are addicted to drugs, and they'll try and get the homeless to either deal the drugs or, give them money for the drugs, or they'll trade them. And the thing that bothers me the most is when the women are drug addicted and you see the gang members preying on them.
Folks, you've probably been hearing me talk about Wi-Fi for a while now. Wi-Fi has been getting a ton of phone calls from you, and I thank you for supporting an investment that actually helps people. A lot of people are talking about this investment, and I like to review the basics with you. First off, yes, it's true. You can earn up to 10.25% fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market or to the Fed. You can turn your income on or off, compounded, whatever you choose, and there are absolutely no fees. There are no restrictions on your principal if you ever need your money back, and you'll get your monthly statement with no surprises. If you are not sure if you can trust this economy, this secure collateralized portfolio may be a very good option for you. Just go to investwirefi.com. That's invest, the letter Y, then refi.com. Folks, I take my endorsements very seriously. If you're looking for a solid investment that helps people, contact my friends at Wi-Fi and then tell them Siyamak sent you. Now let's go back to the interview.
So now the community is fed up because people like Cameron, who kind of, what's interesting about this is that these people are also becoming citizen journalists. They're doing Public Records Act requests, they're digging into the records, they're looking at the numbers.
When the media is not doing their job, that's what happens.
They're doing a better job than a lot of media, I think. But yeah, Cameron has done a lot of records requests to find out about funding and occupancy and how the shelter is run and administered. She knows how things work inside of the shelter, and she knows what the street looks like outside of the shelter. And what she and other neighbors eventually did is create relationships with, their senior lead officers, the police officers in their neighborhood. They're on a first name basis with the drug dealer down the street. They have more connection and more knowledge of their local neighborhoods than, say, the field representatives from the council district offices do. And they are kind of trying to make these connections between the housing authorities, the police department. Cameron helped the police arrest several gang members that were, involved with the shelter. And what happened was when they finally got an encampment cleared and a dealer who was there, they got them housing. The community went in and they cleaned the area. It was near a bridge down the street from the shelter. And they put in mulch, and they're starting to do landscaping, they're putting in flowers and, beautiful plants there, hoping that it won't populate again.
It seems like people are taking this in their own hands, and they are kind of either giving up on the government, or they're actually trying to force the government.
Both. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, April said the government doesn't do anything it's supposed to do, so you can really rely on their inaction. Because she says technically they could take down those planters that she put up, but she doesn't expect that they'll do that because they don't really do anything. This is what she said.
So you mentioned that some of these city council districts, what they're doing is, if you're connected and you know how to work the system and you're wealthy, then you can get them to do something for you and clean up your area and then push these encampments to other areas. But if you're not, you don't really have anywhere to go, essentially.
That is my impression, and I hope that time proves me wrong. But yes, yes, and I think it's alarming. But I think that the fallout from a lot of misguided policy decisions and mismanagement of these programs ends up falling on the people who have fewer resources, who have less of a voice, who have less money, and who are not as loud.
Why are so many people leaving California? It wasn't long ago, people from everywhere wanted to move to the Golden State to enjoy a better life. Sadly, the standard of living has been dropping in the past decade. Are you like me and wonder why this is happening? I'm Siyamak, host of California Insider. In our film, Leaving California, The Untold Story, I take you an intimate journey of love, loss, tragedy, and hope as residents face the prospect of leaving their beloved state. Everyday people like you tell their stories about why they have to move out of the state even though they don't want to. Experts and policymakers also give insights about what's happening behind the scenes. Together, we get to the root cause of this exodus. Go to leavingcalifornia.com to view the first 15 minutes of the film for free. By watching Leaving California, you can be part of the solution. Again, go to leavingcalifornia.com. Is there any hope for LA that you see to fix this problem?
I think it's hard for people to see the hope in this situation because our neighborhoods, they might look better for a while, but everything looks like it's getting worse. However, I'd say if there's hope, it's in people, yeah, like Keith, because Keith is both, he's very politely critical of the system. He's not rude. He's soft-spoken, and I like the way he does it, but he really is putting pressure on our elected leaders and the people who should be responsible and accountable for these programs. And at the same time, he really cares. He tries to find people housing. People reach out to him now, people who are struggling, who are on the streets, and they say, I've tried, I don't know what else to do. And he sometimes is able to connect them with, he's got a good Rolodex now, so he can he can call somebody at LASA or call somebody at the city and try to get people housed. It's not his job. Ideally, he shouldn't be having to do this. However, I think the fact that he cares and he's not afraid to critique the system, because I think that's another thing that happens is that a lot of these programs have an ideological impetus or bent, which might be legitimate, but in practice, they're really not working. And if anyone criticizes them, you're sort of cast as being someone who isn't compassionate or who doesn't care about homeless people, right? And that has been very effective for crushing dissent. And
Or you don't care about the poor people,
right.
poverty, and you're privileged or whatever.
Right. So people are scared. They're fed up and they're at their wits' end, seeing their neighborhoods destroyed. And I mean, it's really like a level of societal decay that's, it's very upsetting.
Beige, do you have any other thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, well, first I would just encourage people to read the story that we did.
Which we're going to leave a link below for our audience.
It's a local story, but it points to a broader issue and it's representative. And, you get a sense, in a way it's a profile of these people, you get a sense of where they're coming from and what they're doing. And Yeah, I guess I would just encourage people to try to reach out to their representatives and try to hold them accountable and maintain this balance of not being scared to criticize the status quo when it's really failing, but at the same time not lose that sense of compassion when it comes to what is really a desperate humanitarian crisis.
Beige Luciano-Adams, reporter with Epoch Times. It was great to have you on California Insider.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much, Siyamak.
We have an exciting news for you. At California Insider, we created a new product. It's called California Insider Opinion. This is where our insiders and experts across the state are actually telling you what's going on behind the headlines. When there's a breaking news, a big issue, important issue happening in California, they're gonna come on the screen and tell you what's happening behind the scenes. And these are like 7 to 10 minutes of opinion formats where the guests are talking to the camera directly, telling you what's happening.
You're paying a tax increase of tens of thousands of dollars every year as a condition of keeping what you already own.
Make sure to look at the description below because you want to sign up on our newsletter because a lot of these opinions might be very sensitive that some people in the social media platforms may not like. So we're putting them in the newsletter on our website so you can have them. These opinions will actually help you understand the political and policy landscape of California. We highly recommend you follow it.